Okay, so first and foremost, I want to go through some examples of gang stalking, and I'm an expert on the target's approach to gang stalking. I think I've been in about every single situation you can imagine while being gang stalked. What life comes from day to day being gang stalked, and how you constantly have to deal with numerous individuals basically plotting on you, using the environment around you against you. Everything from covert drugging to electronic weapons to being group stalked at high numbers. These are individuals who, plan on stalking you when you're asleep, what they're going to be doing the next day when you wake up. So I've been living like that for a long time, and I've learned how to resort to using my environment and to using my own personal intuition and skills to navigate through gang stalking. And out of the millions of people around the world who go through gang stalking, I've had an opportunity to speak to a few of them. And what I've learned is usually after talking to an individual for a small appropriate amount of time, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, usually it gives them more grounding just speaking to me and seeing my perspectives. And I found that they learn through me how to get through it much more easy. I began presenting my courses in June of 2016, and I developed them in the spring of 2016, and that was very exciting. There were people who were near suicide who I was able to coach out of suicide. I feel a couple of them were borderline resorting to violence. They might have went out and done something harsh because of how they felt about their circumstance. With the women I spoke to, it seemed to have affected the women a lot more. I think being gang stalked as a woman is far more terrifying than it is for men. And so a lot of the women that I spoke to, I just kept, encouraging them to expand upon their own power, and don't be stupid, but also don't live in fear either. Carry themselves a certain way. There's certain things they can do throughout the day to navigate through gang stalking a lot easier. One woman lived in constant fear, and then after I spoke to her for about a week, she was out talking to people, telling them what gang stalking was. So I was able to learn firsthand not only what's happening in my life with me being gang stalked, but that opportunity to teach people allowed me to learn what it was like from their perspective. What other things can happen to these different people, how gang stalking was, some of these people lived in big cities. Some of these people lived in places that were much different than me. And so how their environment was used against them in gang stalking was different than mine. So I got to learn a vast quantity of knowledge. Mainly what I like to do is, be an inspirational voice for people. When I first started coming out of my courses to be gang stalking, I didn't take too much time to film the gang stalking that was occurring to me. Oftentimes I would walk down the street and show the massive amounts of brightening, and I would show people how I was waving at the cars. My main motivation for that was the cars would always be used as a form of intimidation. Now I live in a rural area of Michigan, so some of the areas I was walking at, the cars would approach me like they were going to hit me and kill me. And I had to get into a certain mode as to where I wouldn't budge. I knew this was a gang stalking tactic, and I didn't allow that to bother me. I just went along with it and kept walking. Eventually I got used to it. Sometimes these individuals would drive past me going 100, trying to scare me to get me to move. And it easily could have ended up, with me being hit and killed, but I didn't allow that to faze me. And when I first started doing my beat gang stalking courses, I just started hammering that down into people's consciousness that, you have to be real with yourself, you have to be real with your life. These people who gang stalked you, these are people who, in reality, they're people who are hiding. They're not going to come out of hiding and come talk to you about it. They're just going to hire a bunch of other people to do it. So I've always told people, this is your life you're dealing with. Are you going to let a bunch of people in hiding arranging you being stalked to discourage you from having a good life? Or are you going to get out there and do the things you need to do? So facing your fears, The fear of death is one of the things that comes up with people being gang stalked. That goes back to the confusion stage, especially. When you first start getting gang stalked, most likely you didn't even know what it was. And that's the confusion stage, when anything around you is perceived as a threat. You don't know who these people are, what they're up to, what's going on, and that's going to be the time where the fear of death comes in. When somebody's hit with a real confusing thing or they're hit with a fearful thing, ultimately the root cause of that is psychologically a fear of death. So if you're being gang stalked, you got to get into your mind, you're not worried about, you got to accept that, death is inevitable. It's a psychological process that you go through. I've walked the streets and spoken to all kinds of people. I've walked the inner city streets, at 3 a.m. and spoke to people about gang stalking and what it was. I just sort of turned that thing off, that little fear factor off, and got into a mode where it was straight education. So getting past that confusion stage and tackling the fears and moving forward, I always tell people is the first step. The definitions that you have about what's going on around you is number one. One of the first things I did was go stand on a corner and watch the cars go by gang stalking me. I used to sit there for hours and then start interacting with the cars, like talking to them, waving at them and stuff, and it changed my perspective. Now I'm going to move forward and present this video. This is the same level of targeting that's always been going on with me. The same level of gang stalking. Gang stalking started occurring to me in the summer of 2015. This is the same sort of stuff that was happening then, but at that time it was still a little bit light. It didn't get as heavy as what it gravitated into, but the gang stalking that was going on, I didn't know what to look for. I just knew something was strange and there was something weird going on. And I know there were electronic weapons being used against me. I know I was being group stalked, going to and from different types of places, but I just saw strange people, and by looking at the caliber of the people, it threw me off because a lot of them didn't look to have they had any formal education. They didn't look like they weren't really employed anywhere. They just looked like strange people, so it looked really alien. It couldn't make sense to me, and going through gang stalking, you may see homeless people, doing this stuff to you. You may see people high off of drugs doing it to you. It doesn't really make much sense how this stuff is happening. And so over time, I went through a period and I learned what gang stalking was. And so I'm going to give some examples. Okay, now, as you see, I'm going to start off walking, and I'm walking around a curve, and there's a truck parked at the end of this dead end, and the truck comes out as I walk. That's a common factor in gang stalking, is people will lie in wait, or they will wait till you can visually see a certain area, then they will have a driver drive out. So I'm approaching a street. I just turned this corner and I'm approaching the street past a park, and now a red truck is just going to drive out from the dead end. That's something that you will encounter while you're being gang stalked over and over and over again. If I walk into a parking lot, a car will come out exactly as I'm walking in, or a car will be pulling in at the same time. You know, entry exit strategy they use. And a lot of people who get gang stalked will tell you this isn't something that happens like once a day where it's no big deal. You're talking about every time. So the overall frustration of it is high. I mean, it's very high. If it happened to the average person twice a day, it'd be very strange for them. Once they get, and then after about a week, they'd be like, "Whoa, what the hell is going on? What's happening in my life?" Then if it's happening several times a day, every day, nonstop, then that person could really be struggling for answers, trying to figure out what's going on in their environment. And see, when I did my beat gang stalking courses, when I first started setting them up, this stuff was already in full swing. I started developing my courses again in the spring of 2016, and I started presenting them in June of 2016. And I was already going, I already had my food drugged several times, electronic weapons used on me several times, literally just being group stalked every single second of the day. Stores, over other people's houses that I've known. Some people I've been knowing my whole life for years. Where I live at, it was happening to me. I could go miles and miles and miles, and it would just still be going on and on and on and on. And when I presented my courses, it was already like that. And then what my courses were meant to do was give the people the motivation, of course, that I found within myself. I was able to pull out the motivation within myself to deal with this stuff and learn from it. Okay, so you see the red truck. Okay. And then, of course, the red is significant within gang stalking. When you come to color coding, red is the color commonly most used. Most people who go through gang stalking talk about, I'm being followed by people with red shirts, I'm being followed by people driving red vehicles, or red trucks, different, like big trucks, like commercial trucks, like, whatever's. I want to go back and show people when I was walking past when the red truck came out. It was also at the park. I don't know if we can catch that. See, if you notice right here, there's a red truck and a black truck right in the parking lot at the park. So the guy or the girl driving the car, they're being told through a medium, through technology, to drive out. This driver may not know anything about me, or may have no sort of affiliation necessarily with gang stalking as you look at it. They may have been contacted, via Facebook or via some other app on their phone, and whatever they were told to get them to drive from the dead end out. Whoever had to tell them something to get them to do that. And so all they had to do was look at their phone on Google Map or some other way. Maybe somebody texted them, told them, hey, drive out. So when I get to this certain spot, it's communicated to them to drive out. So now they have participated in the overall group stalking that has been going on for a very long time. And that's how it works. So now that I move on forward, I'll see many different cars doing the same activity. It's all a part of the same group stalking effect. Okay, brightening. We'll go back. See a red car. See, okay, so I'm sitting on the corner right there, basically just minding my own business, and now a red car is going to basically just emerge out of nowhere. It's on the street, but that's how it feels when you're getting gang stalked. Like, oh, look, another car doing brightening. It just comes out of nowhere. Red car, and then it's going to be crossed by another red car. with the brights on, brightening. And I got hours of footage of this stuff. This isn't anything rare. See another car that this same car right here was a woman. She had done a few different assignments on me. Like she would drive out, drive away, turn around, come back. She did that like 3 or 4 times while I was at the beach walking. But if you notice, she has her brights on as well. So after the red car, then I turn around and then look, somebody else who was following me off and on that day has the brights on their car, the headlights on their car. And so they also participated within the overall effect of gang stalking, group stalking with the brightening tactic. So that's an add-on to everything that's already been going on. And I might have it on film. The woman was following me off and on throughout the day with her brights on. She obviously wanted me to know she was there. Another red car brightening. So you're getting the vibe of what's going on. Periodically throughout the day, if you're a target of gang stalking, you're going to routinely be followed and intercepted by cars using tactics, brightening, color coding, the mimic, the street theater. That's just something that's just going to happen repeatedly. And now the gist of this is if they can add other additions to it. So if they can get the person who drives the car to look a certain way, there may be some subliminal connotation to you being gang stalked. If the driver can have a certain look, or if the driver is somebody in particular, now that's added on to you being gang stalked. So this could be a total stranger who you don't know, you've never seen in your life, and you're not sure why they would be doing this to you. Or it could be somebody who has perhaps been gang stalking you for weeks, months, even years. So, you're being followed by multiple people using this brightening attack. Some of them you don't know. Some of them you may know. So one individual, like for instance driving this car, they may have no idea what gang stalking is. I would expect like 80 to 90% of them really don't know necessarily what gang stalking is. They're asked for whatever reason to do this assignment. It varies as into how it comes, what channels it goes through to get to them. But again, they're going to be driving past, and I always see them looking at their phone. Most of the time I do, it shows them on their phone exactly where to go through the Google map. I had a friend of mine who was showing me how it worked from their phone. She was getting asked to do assignments, and she would sit down and show me on her phone how throughout the day they would tell her specifically where to go. Even I'm talking about when I was in the car with her, they would tell her like specifically what gas station to go to or what store to go to at what time. That way they would coordinate the assignment. As she's pulling in, 2 other cars are pulling at the same time. So I'm watching her on her phone do the assignment against me. Now I'm watching 2, 3 other cars entering the gas station, exiting the gas station at the same time. So all these people are participating in group stalking, but the majority of them might not know they're participating in group stalking. But there's always going to be a few of them who are more intimately involved with your stalking. They may know, they may be a part of using electronic weapons on you. They may know something about you being drugged. They may have been stalking you like every single day. Like it depends on, it really depends who it's going to be. So it creates a psychological factor. You're saying, I want to be left alone. I know I'm being gang stalked, but I want to be left alone. And the gang stalking just keeps coming. And you're wondering, who is that in that car? And what does this mean? And why are they doing it? Okay, you see the truck pull in the parking lot. So the red car just went past with the brights on. And then as the red car passed, now the truck's pulling into the park. So the red car passed with the brightening technique, and then the red truck pulled inside the entrance to the park, to the parking lot at the park. At the same time, this was all, of course, coordinated through Google Map, through technology. It's not that these people driving these cars are that savvy to perfectly pull in at the same exact time that the red car passed, right when I'm in front of there. No, they're being told through technology how to do it. It's that simple. So they're not really doing, they're just driving the car. It's made that easy. And that's the car that was using the brightening technique. You notice how I waved. Oh, I'm going to pull that back a little bit. You notice how I waved. A lot of these cars, I'll be waving at them. They'll be waving back at me. Some of them will stop and offer me a ride from time to time. I've had that happen a couple of times where the people would stop and say, "Do you need a ride?" Or the person, I would see them later on, and they would remember me, and we would start talking. And sometimes I'd ask them about, like, have you ever heard of gang stalking? Some of them will say, "Yeah, I've heard of it." The majority of them will say they have never heard of it. And so I would talk to those people, and sometimes they would tell me, like, information, that somebody paid them to walk past me, or we'll get into a little bit of detail about what's going on, and they'll be a little, like, forthfront about it. I've had people, tell me how they've been approached, giving $20 or something to wear a red shirt or whatever. Like, the people are a little bit open about it. If you really want to get out there and talk to people, you can get out there and do it and record people, and they'll be honest about it. Not everybody's going to lie about what's going on with it. So I'm fast forwarding a little bit. You see this truck, basically this truck's going to go down there with a wagon that's following it. And they're going to wait for me to catch up. Then they're going to take off when I catch up. And you see the truck right here with the brightening. So, see, the truck has the brightening on it, and right as I walk up, they take off. It's little stuff like that just is constantly happening around somebody who's being gang stalked. And it's meant to look like, like sometimes it conveys itself as it could be a coincidence, but it's not. This stuff is occurring constantly. And like I said, these people are just told basically, it's technology, being networked through the technology. And a lot of it's obvious. I've had people email me, like, in the last couple of days that didn't even know what gang stalking was, and they're starting to see that it's obvious. Anybody can see that, this stuff's, that there's something going on. There's going to be more. So you see again another truck pulls up and then pulls back in. Yeah, they didn't even leave. They just pulled out and pulled back in just because I walked up.